Hello and welcome to the Daily Forex Report for March 1st. We are looking at the US-Japanese yen pair. This pair closed down, but just by a little bit, had a fairly tight range compared to the past several sessions. We are looking for it to potentially move higher and hit some resistance around 81.75, possibly moving down and hitting support around 80.25. Now, let's take a look at the Euro-USD pair. This pair has been moving sideways for the most part. Moved to the downside, had a fairly tight range day today, closed down. We are looking for it to potentially to go as high as 134.24, possibly as low as 132.06. Look for some resistance around 133.75 and look for some support around 132.75. Now the pound US dollar pair, you can see how I drew a trend line. We've hit it a couple of times. Definitely want to take a look at that here in a little bit. Closed higher, didn't break the previous session's high. Really looking for a close above that to see this thing take off. Look for it to potentially go as high as 160.37, possibly down to 158.31. Look for some resistance around 159.90 and look for some support around 158.90. Now the US Swiss, this pair closed higher during this last session. Fairly small range. Look for it to potentially go as high as 0.9124, possibly as low as 0.8969. Look for some resistance around 0.9090 and look for some support around 0.8995. Alright, let's talk about news announcements. Tomorrow we have at 5 a.m. Eastern the Eurozone Producers Price Index for January being released. Consensus on that is that it's dropped from 4.3% down to 3.6%. We also at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time have the Canada's releasing their gross domestic product for December. For December, they're showing an increase from a negative 0.1% up to 0.3%. Year to date, they're showing a slight decrease from 2.0% down to 1.9%. We also at 8:30 a.m. Eastern have Canada's releasing their quarterly gross domestic product for annualized, and for the fourth quarter, showing a dramatic decrease actually from 3.5% down to 1.8%. So could be negative news for the Canadian dollar. So definitely keep an eye on that. Now, as far as what I'm looking at during this next couple of sessions, or during this next session, our Friday session that we're going into, if you go to the hour chart, take a look at the US-Japanese yen pair. Interestingly enough, let me back out even further. You can see that we are having some consolidation down here. We have 1, 2, 3 points of consolidation to the downside. We have several points as well. You can see right in this area that we've been moving sideways and kind of tagged it over the past several hours. So I do anticipate a breakout. Not sure which direction it's going to go. If it goes to the downside, I would definitely look for it to come down into this area, as we have some previous resistance in that area, as well as some support there, and I just believe that it'll come on down to that point. Now, if it breaks to the upside, we could see it go up to around the 81.40 mark and possibly even come up to 81.65. Now, if you switch over to the Euro USD, this pair is consolidating down as well. You can see, as far as a move to the downside, it's a fairly sharp trend line that's been created. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times it's touched this trend line to the downside. We had a strong move to the downside during the previous session, and we've closed down for this last session. So we could be looking at a reversal type play. If it does do that, breaks to the upside, at that point look for it to come back into this area. See how it moved sideways there. We have a point here that it tagged, and this is the strong drop that we had started to lighten up there, even though it continued lower, to that point. You could also look for it to come to back to the high here when it pulled back. If it breaks to the downside, of course, you could look for it to tag that low, potentially even taking out that low, and then coming over here. You see this nice area of sideways action that we had for a good while, and if you trace that on over, at that point you'll see that it comes right in line to pretty much right here. So we could definitely get there if this trend to the downside continues. Now the pound US dollar pair, if you look on the hour time frame, you can see that we've been tracking higher. 1, 2, pulled back a little bit, and then moved higher 3, 4, and kind of moved sideways today. We've tagged this trend line a couple of times and basically looking for a reversal type play. You could look for it to come back down. I'm actually hoping that it'll continue higher, but you know, the market doesn't always do what we want it to do. So if it breaks out to the downside right here, look to go short, exiting off of this low right here that it tagged, which if you draw that on over is where we found some resistance here as well as here. So it very well could come on down to that point. Well, I hope that helps. Until next time, this is Jason Fielder. Good trading.